I remember waking up each morning with a sense of dread. Yet I couldn't help but reach for my phone before even getting out of bed. The soft glow of the screen was my morning sun. Notifications from a dozen apps competed for my attention. Instagram showed me perfect lives I could never live up to. Twitter screamed the latest outrage, and Facebook brought up memories from years ago, making me question where all that time had gone. My day was a blur of constant updates. On the train to work, I scrolled through endless feeds, absorbing bits and pieces of news and opinions, most of which I'd forget within minutes. Even at work, I couldn't escape. My phone buzzed with every breaking news alert and every meme my friends shared. Emails pinged in, each one more urgent than the last, demanding my immediate response. Lunchtime was no better. Instead of a break, it was another opportunity to catch up on YouTube videos and trending TikToks. I'd watch as people showcased their seemingly effortless talents and adventures. I felt inadequate, stuck in my mundane routine while everyone else seemed to be living their best life. By the time I got home, my mind was a tangled mess of information. But instead of unwinding, I'd turn on the TV and let Netflix autoplay the next episode of whatever show I was binging. It was a background hum to the endless scroll through more social media, a never-ending cycle of stimulation. My brain never had a moment to rest. Conversations with friends and family became shallow. I was always half listening, half engaged, my mind constantly wandering back to the latest notification. I found it hard to concentrate, hard to remember things. Simple tasks became monumental challenges because my mind was always somewhere else, drowning in the next wave of information. Sleep eluded me. I'd lie in bed, eyes burning from the screen's glare, mind racing with all the things I'd read and seen throughout the day. My brain refused to shut down, replaying arguments from comment sections and news clips over and over. When I did sleep, it was restless, filled with vivid dreams that left me more exhausted than refreshed. It wasn't just about keeping up anymore. It was a compulsion, a habit that had woven itself into every part of my life. I knew it was affecting me, but I couldn't stop. The constant barrage of information was addictive. Each new piece of data a hit of dopamine, a momentary escape from my own thoughts and feelings. My life was dominated by screens and feeds, by the endless need to know and see everything. I was trapped in a cycle of overexposure, my mind overloaded with the sheer volume of content I consumed daily. I felt more connected to the world, and yet more disconnected from myself than ever before. The constant influx of information began to seep into every corner of my mind, blurring the lines between reality and the digital world. At first it was subtle. I'd find myself feeling on edge, a low hum of anxiety buzzing beneath the surface. But as time went on, that hum grew louder, turning into a relentless roar that I couldn't escape. I started noticing the effects at work. Simple tasks took longer because my mind was constantly jumping from one thing to another. I'd read the same email 3 times and still not remember what it said. Meetings felt endless as my attention drifted, unable to latch onto the conversation. My productivity plummeted, and with it my confidence. I began to doubt my abilities, questioning whether I was even capable of doing my job anymore. Outside of work, things weren't any better. I'd sit down to read a book, something I used to love, but I couldn't get through more than a few pages without feeling restless. My mind would wander back to my phone, wondering what I was missing. I'd give in, check my notifications, and before I knew it, an hour had passed. The book lay forgotten, replaced by the constant stream of updates. Social interactions became a source of stress. I couldn't focus on conversations with friends and family. My mind was always half occupied, worrying about the latest news or social media post. I'd nod and smile, but inside I felt disconnected, like I was watching my life unfold from a distance. The people I cared about felt further away than ever, even when they were right in front of me. My anxiety grew with each passing day. The endless stream of information was a weight pressing down on me, suffocating me. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, mind spinning with everything I'd seen and read. Sleep became a battleground, my mind refusing to shut down. I'd lie awake for hours, replaying the day's events, worrying about the next. Stress became my constant companion. It was there in the pit of my stomach, a gnawing sensation that never went away. My chest felt tight, my breath shallow. I couldn't escape the feeling that I was always behind, always missing out on something important. The pressure to stay informed, to keep up with everything, was overwhelming. Even my downtime wasn't relaxing. I'd try to unwind with a TV show or a movie, but my mind would drift, thinking about all the things I needed to catch up on. I'd pause the show to check my phone, and before I knew it, an hour had passed. I wasn't really enjoying anything anymore. Everything felt like a distraction, a way to numb the anxiety that was constantly simmering beneath the surface. My ability to focus was shattered. Tasks that used to be straightforward now felt impossible. I'd start something, get distracted, and move on to something else, leaving a trail of half-finished projects in my wake. My mind was a tangled mess, unable to settle on anything for more than a few minutes. I felt like I was constantly spinning my wheels, going nowhere. The worst part was the sense of helplessness. I knew what was happening to me, could see the toll it was taking on my mental health, but I didn't know how to stop it. The information overload had become a part of me, an addiction that I couldn't break. I was caught in a mental spiral, a never-ending cycle of anxiety, stress, and distraction, and I couldn't see a way out. I used to pride myself on my ability to think deeply, to engage with complex ideas and really chew on them until I understood. But as the months went by, I noticed a change. It was like my brain had turned into a sieve, information slipping through the holes faster than I could catch it. At work, I'd read reports or articles that once would have intrigued me, but now I just skimmed them, picking up only the broadest strokes. I was reading to finish, not to understand. The deep, critical thinking that used to come so naturally felt like a distant memory. My contributions in meetings became surface level at best, regurgitating the basics rather than offering any real insight. I felt like an imposter, nodding along as if I was still on top of things. Outside of work, my intellectual life suffered even more. Books that once captured my imagination now felt like chores. I couldn't lose myself in a novel, couldn't follow the thread of a dense non-fiction book. I'd get through a chapter and realize I hadn't absorbed any of it. The joy of reading, of learning something new, had been replaced by a restless urge to move on to the next thing. Conversations that once sparked my curiosity now felt like a burden. I'd listen to friends discuss politics or philosophy, subjects I used to dive into with gusto, and I'd feel lost. My thoughts were scattered, my arguments half-formed. I'd offer a point, then lose my train of thought mid-sentence. The more I tried to engage, the more I realized how shallow my thinking had become. Social media and the constant barrage of information were partly to blame. The endless scroll fed me snippets of information, but nothing in depth. I'd read a headline, maybe a few sentences, then move on to the next post. My brain was trained for quick hits, not for the sustained focus that real understanding required. I was drowning in data, but starving for knowledge. It wasn't just my ability to think critically that suffered. My memory took a hit too. I'd struggled to recall details from articles I'd read, even just a few days before. Names, dates, important facts, they all slipped away, buried under the avalanche of new information that followed. I'd find myself in conversations, groping for details I knew I should remember, feeling embarrassed by my blank spots. Problem-solving became a Herculean task, where once I could sit with a problem, break it down, and methodically work through it, now my mind jumped from one idea to the next, unable to settle. I'd start on one approach, then abandon it halfway for another, never seeing anything through to the end. My work suffered, my personal projects languished, and my confidence in my intellectual abilities plummeted. I missed the days when I could lose myself in thought, when I could spend hours pondering a single idea, turning it over in my mind. Now my thoughts felt fractured, like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't quite fit together. The deep, satisfying click of understanding was gone, replaced by a constant sense of disorientation. I tried to fight it. I set aside time to read, to think, to focus. But the habits of shallow consumption were hard to break. My phone was always within reach, a constant temptation. Even when I managed to put it away, my mind would wander, conditioned to seek the next distraction. The depth of thought I craved seemed further away than ever. In the quiet moments, I felt a deep sense of loss. I mourned the person I used to be, the thinker, the learner. I wondered if I'd ever get that part of myself back, or if it was gone for good, buried under the weight of too much information and too little understanding. The physical toll of my digital addiction crept up on me slowly, but it hit hard once it became undeniable. At first, it was just a few late nights here and there, staying up to watch one more episode or scroll through one more feed. But soon, those late nights became a regular occurrence, and my body started to feel the consequences. Sleep was the first casualty. I used to sleep soundly, my body and mind getting the rest they needed. But now, I'd lie awake, my eyes burning from the screen's blue light, my mind racing with all the information I'd consumed throughout the day. When I did manage to fall asleep, it was restless and fragmented. I'd wake up multiple times, my brain still buzzing with unfinished thoughts and anxieties. Mornings became a struggle. I'd hit the snooze button over and over, trying to steal a few more minutes of sleep that never felt like enough. Getting out of bed felt like wading through molasses, my body heavy and sluggish. My morning routine, once smooth and efficient, turned into a series of half-awake blunders. I'd forget where I'd put my keys, misplace important items, and often leave the house feeling frazzled and unprepared. The eye strain was relentless. Hours spent staring at screens left my eyes dry and sore. I'd blink rapidly, trying to clear the haze that seemed to settle over my vision. Headaches became a regular part of my day, starting as a dull throb behind my eyes and often escalating to a full-blown migraine. My neck and shoulders ached from hunching over devices, muscles tight and knotted from the constant tension. My diet took a hit too. With my mind always distracted and my schedule thrown off by late nights, cooking seemed like too much effort. I started relying on quick, unhealthy options. Fast food, snacks, anything that didn't require time or thought. The pounds crept on, my clothes fitting tighter, my energy levels plummeting. I felt heavy and lethargic, my body weighed down by the junk I was fueling it with. Exercise, once a regular part of my routine, fell by the wayside. I used to enjoy long runs and trips to the gym, the way they cleared my mind and energized my body. But now, I could barely muster the motivation to move. The idea of working out seemed exhausting, another task on an already overwhelming to-do list. My muscles grew weaker, my stamina dwindled, and the endorphin highs I used to rely on were a distant memory. The worst part was knowing that I was doing this to myself. Every time I reached for my phone instead of a book, chose TV over sleep, or picked fast food over a home-cooked meal, I knew I was making a choice that was hurting me. But breaking the cycle felt impossible. The instant gratification of digital consumption was too tempting, too ingrained in my daily life. My overall health was in decline, and I felt powerless to stop it. I was trapped in a loop of poor decisions, my body bearing the brunt of my inability to disconnect. I knew things needed to change, but every day felt like a battle against habits that had become second nature. I was tired, both mentally and physically, and I didn't know how much longer I could keep going like this. The breaking point came on a day that started like any other. I woke up groggy and disoriented, the weight of another sleepless night pressing down on me. As usual, I reached for my phone, scrolling through notifications and feeling that familiar rush of anxiety as I tried to catch up with everything I'd missed while I was supposed to be resting. But something felt different that morning. The usual excitement of new updates and information was replaced by a heavy sense of dread. My head pounded, my eyes ached, and my body felt like it had been run over by a truck. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was spiraling out of control, my life slipping away in a haze of screens and endless information. I decided to take a hard look at myself. I stood in front of the mirror, really seeing my reflection for the first time in months. The dark circles under my eyes, the breakouts, the tired, hollow expression. It all hit me at once. I didn't recognize the person staring back at me. I realized I couldn't keep living like this. Something had to change. The first step was admitting to myself that I had a problem. It wasn't easy to acknowledge how deeply entrenched I'd become in my digital habits, how they were affecting every aspect of my life. but recognizing the issue was a crucial first step. I knew I needed to take action, to reclaim control over my mind and body. I started small. The idea of completely unplugging was overwhelming, so I made a plan to take gradual steps. I set boundaries for my phone use. No screens for the first hour after waking up and the last hour before bed. I began to leave my phone in another room while I worked, forcing myself to focus on one task at a time without the constant interruptions. Sleep became a priority. I established a bedtime routine, turning off all devices an hour before bed and spending that time reading or meditating. It was difficult at first. My mind would race, itching to check my phone. But slowly, I started to notice a difference. I began to fall asleep more easily. My nights became less restless, and I woke up feeling a little more refreshed each day. Physical health was next. I committed to cooking more meals at home, opting for whole foods instead of processed junk. It was a challenge to break the habit of convenience, but as I started to eat better, my energy levels began to rise. I also made time for exercise, even if it was just a short walk around the block. Moving my body, feeling my muscles work, brought a sense of vitality that I'd been missing. I tackled my digital habits head-on. I cleaned up my social media feeds, unfollowing accounts that didn't add value to my life and setting time limits on my apps. I began to use technology as a tool, not a crutch, seeking out information with intention rather than mindlessly consuming whatever came my way. I replaced some of my screen time with hobbies I used to love, like reading, drawing, and playing music. Reconnecting with these activities reminded me of the joy and satisfaction they brought, a stark contrast to the empty gratification of endless scrolling. The changes weren't easy, and they didn't happen overnight. There were setbacks, moments of weakness when I fell back into old patterns. But each time, I reminded myself why I was doing this: to feel better, to be better. I was reclaiming my life, one small step at a time. The outcome is still uncertain. I don't know if I'll ever fully break free from the habits that have held me captive for so long. Some days are better than others, and I still have a long way to go. But for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful. I'm beginning to see glimpses of the person I used to be, the person I want to be again. As I continue this journey, I hold on to that hope. I don't have all the answers, and I'm not sure where this path will lead. But I'm moving forward, taking each day as it comes, determined to find a balance that allows me to live fully and authentically. The story isn't over yet, and I'm eager to see where it goes.